And so the changes that we're seeing in retail really aren't happening in a vacuum. They're very much influenced by the way we're all living our lives in other parts. We're not shopping, and so work is the place where we are most of our day. Gensler's been studying workplace and behavior and engagement in the workplace for 15 years. And we've seen some really interesting changes as we've published a survey yearly about what's driving workplace engagement and performance. Themes come out every year. So in 2008, individual performance was the big theme. People were really driven and their workplace satisfaction was very tied to their individual performance. By 2013, there had been a shift and people were really more focused on autonomy and choice. That was the big theme of that year's survey. In 2016, things became much more relational, and it was about your relationship to your manager. But this year, the biggest thing that came out of our survey was a sense of connectedness and belonging with your peers. So how connected did you feel to the people you worked with? There's similar data coming out of Gallup, who understands that increasingly whether you have a best friend at work is a major factor as to whether or not you'll be engaged in your job. And what this is telling us is that people are really in a sort of talent market that's so competitive right now. People are demanding that their workplace provide community for them. That's a huge thing that's happening. And when you see the rise of co-working spaces where socializing is kind of built into the mix and how successful they are, that's a huge thing that's driving people's desire to be together now that mobility and agility can allow you to basically be alone all day if that's what you want. So we're seeing that this is all happening in the midst of what people are calling a global loneliness crisis. It's been reported on widely. Governments have studied it. The UK recently actually appointed a loneliness minister to understand this problem. And even recently, the New York Times published an op-ed saying that soon human contact will be a luxury good that's only available to the rich. Now, I mean, obviously this is a hot take, and that's a pretty extreme opinion, but I do think that it's sort of painting a picture where the built environment and places where people can be together face to face are more important than ever.
I mean, and all of this is so important because it really informs the way that we approach every single one of our projects. So though I live, eat, and breathe retail day to day, I need to be influenced by all of these other things. And what it means more and more is that space is more important than ever. And for example, Roadrunners is, if you're not familiar, a group based out of New York. We just recently completed a space for them where you don't see it in this photo. It's a community space, but in the back, upstairs, hidden in the corner, is a retail space by New Balance. And what's interesting about this model is that Roadrunners doesn't have the mission of selling product, but they formed a partnership with New Balance to become, so in a way, that New Balance store is an amenity to Roadrunners. And just last week, Roadrunners had over 4,000 people come into their space in one day. All joking aside.
Right. I mean, we do think that the role of retail is, people can joke about retail therapy, but retail really can bring people together. And so, we put it to you that as retailers, you have the opportunity to actually change and improve people's lives by creating that social platform where they can come together. And that's very much the driving force behind what we do as well. I mean, we believe truly that design has the power to improve lives. That's part of Gensler's mission, and it's core to our creative partnership as well. So Gensler is talking about customer centricity. We've been very focused on transforming our design business to something that is much more user-centric or human-centric. And as part of that initiative, we launched something called the Gensler Research Institute, and we fund our own proprietary research initiatives. They can be from anything from healthcare to sustainability to IoT. These are all things that our clients are interested in, and they're things that drive us. Now, a couple of years ago, we did a big study, which I'll tell you about today, called the Gensler Experience Index. And that was really to identify the factors of a great experience and to quantify the impact of design. But first, we really had to take this word experience, which is such a buzzword, and has become almost meaningless in its overuse, and really start to put clothes on that emperor. So we did a mixed method study, initially a qualitative ethnographic study, where we went out and spent 2 hours each with 30 people across 5 markets in the US, and we had them take us to their favorite places. And we listened to them describe the experience they were undergoing in their own words, and we took from them, as people who are lay people, not in the design industry, we learned the language that they used, and we understood how they processed their experience. And from there, we developed a framework. And then we used a survey, a 5,000 person survey, representative of the US population, to confirm our framework and develop some top-line trends. And then finally, we've developed an index which will actually score individual people's experiences in places, or assign an index score of experience to a place. And we're learning over time how to apply this to spatialized data, 3D modeling, and using machine learning to help us make all of the retail environments that we design and other environments into continuous learning labs. So that's what I'll talk you through now. So our framework, after talking to all these people, we really understood that an experience is a combination of these 3 things. The expectations that you bring to the experience, so that might be your experience with the brand previously, it might be word of mouth, it might be previous time going to a place, it might be your understanding of product quality or value. Then it's the interactions that you have in that place, whether they're with technology or in a service interaction. It might even be your interactions with the other people using that space. And then, of course, there's the space itself, which is, obviously a thing that Gensler's hugely interested in. But what was interesting to us is that these 3 factors cannot really be understood as separate things by a regular person talking about their experience. So the expectations they brought to it were colored by the interactions they had, were taking place in a space. It was all one holistic continuum for us. And that allowed us to understand that the role that we play in designing space actually needs to be much bigger, and to be the authors of the experience, we need to consider these other 2 pieces. Now, at the center of our framework is the user's or the customer's intention. So people are participating in things for a reason, and it's that reason or intention that affects the way they process their experience and evaluate it. And people tend to be in one of these 5 modes: task, social, discovery, entertainment, or aspiration. And I'll go into those a little bit. So task mode is when you are really focused on getting something done. In task mode, people tend to be a little stressed out, not super open to distraction. They are, highly focused on accomplishing that task. And really the best thing about task mode experiences are when they're over. And when you think about this in a shopping context, this is like surgical shopping. It might be something, running errands. It might be buying a suit for a job interview. This is task shopping, very focused. Social mode is when your primary reason for engaging in experience is to really be with others. And so, when Sarah talked about shopping with her daughter, her cost center, this sounds like social shopping to me, where it might be to buy things, but really it's to engage in being with that other person. In discovery mode, this one's pretty interesting. People are very open-minded in discovery mode, and they tend to be kind of wandering or browsing with no actual intended purpose. When people were in discovery mode, they were having the best experiences, they were the most open-minded, and it was the most easy time to change their mind about a brand. 72% of people in our survey who reported being in a store with no intention to buy as they were wandering in a discovery mindset made a purchase, which is like an amazing conversion rate. So I think the idea of capturing people when they're open and least expecting it is something that we want to try to flip people into as much as we can. Entertainment mode is pretty self-explanatory. It's when you want to be taken out of your regular everyday life and entertained. And in this mode, the user can sometimes be a little bit more passive. And then aspiration mode is hugely important. Terry mentioned earlier in our talks that people are coming to him routinely and saying, well, what's your mission socially? And so when you're sort of participating in something in aspiration mode, you want to be connected to something bigger than yourself. You might be in a moment of self-transformation. And in a retail context, this might be when you're shopping a brand that does have an extremely strong social mission or helps you achieve some kind of self-transformation. We noted that these 5 modes are not mutually exclusive across an experience. People might be toggling among them. I mean, think about when you're in an airport. You're in task mode until you get through security, and then you're much more open to be social, to maybe wander around and discover. This is how these modes work. And we also noticed that if people went to the same place in a different mindset with a different mode, they often experience that place radically differently. Even more important, the places where a person could return to in lots of different modes and have a great experience were the ones that they called their favorite place. So for example, in our ethnographies, a woman took us to Italy, and she described how she could buy specialty items that she couldn't get anywhere else, so that was sort of her task shopping experience. She frequently went there with her husband or with clients to have a drink at the rooftop bar. She loved that they cooked right in front of you, which was hugely entertaining. She loved to kind of wander around and discover, like, ooh, weird Italian candies, how cool. And finally, every time she went, she was reminded of her honeymoon with her husband when they went to Tuscany. So it was really, this Italy place was her favorite because it was really firing on all cylinders in every mode for her. And that's really helped us think about how to make spaces as multimodal and as satisfying in every headspace as possible.